This is Andrea, and today I'm sharing simple and tasty crock pot recipes using everyday ingredients. And as always, I'll make sure to put the recipes in the description box. The first recipe I wanted to share with you all is creamy red potatoes. So for the creamy red potatoes, you're going to need 2 pounds of red potatoes, 1 can of cream of potato soup, 1 brick of softened cream cheese, and a packet of ranch seasoning salad dressing mix. So we're going to start off by quartering our potatoes, and then you're just going to place them in your crock pot. Now, if you have a larger potato like this, you may have to cut it into 6 or 8 pieces. Okay, so now we're going to work on our sauce. I have my softened cream cheese in a bowl. I just added in my ranch seasoning mix. And now I'm adding in my cream of potato soup, and I'm just going to mix it all together until it's nice and smooth. Now I'm just adding my sauce to the potatoes, and I'm going to gently stir it all together. Next, I'm going to cover and cook these low and slow for 6 to 8 hours or until the potatoes are nice and tender. Okay, so here are the potatoes. And I did end up cooking these for a full 8 hours. I checked them at the 6-hour mark and they were still not as tender as I'd like them to be. But these are really very good, nice and creamy. They have a great flavor. They don't need any additional salt because that ranch seasoning is salty enough. And then just serving it with the side of Caesar salad. And then I picked up some rotisserie ribs from Sam's Club. They're already cooked and everything, ready to go, right by the rotisserie chickens. So this is what we're having for dinner tonight, and we will see y'all at the next meal. Next up, I'm making green chicken enchilada soup. You're going to need 2.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs or breast if you prefer. I just prefer thighs because they're just more tender when you're cooking them in a slow cooker. You're also going to need some heavy whipping cream, half a block of softened cream cheese, 2 cups of Monterey Jack cheese. You're also going to need 30 ounces of green enchilada sauce, a half a cup of salsa verde, and the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of chicken broth. I prefer bouillon because it's more flavorful and it takes up less space in my pantry. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start off by preparing the chicken or cooking up that chicken first. I've already cleaned my chicken and I'm just adding it to the crock pot. Next, it's time to add your chicken broth or bouillon if you're using it. I just added in 1.5 cups of water. And for bouillon, for every cup of water you add a teaspoon of bouillon. So here is 1 teaspoon of bouillon. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a whole teaspoon instead of a half a teaspoon because I'll probably end up having to add salt to this anyway. So I just added in another teaspoon of bouillon. Next, I'm adding in both cans of that green chicken enchilada sauce, or that green enchilada sauce, I should say. And I am going to cover and cook this on low for 6 to 8 hours. Okay, so it's been 6 hours. I removed the chicken from the crock pot and I'm just using a couple of forks and just shredding the chicken into pieces. Okay, so I've got the chicken all shredded. Just gonna add that back into the crock pot. Next, I'm adding in half a block of softened cream cheese. Do make sure that it's softened or at room temperature otherwise it's gonna clunk up in that soup. I'm adding in my heavy whipping cream. The recipe calls for heavy whipping cream or half and half. If you wanted to cut back on that fat, definitely use some half and half. My salsa verde and my Monterey Jack cheese, and I am using freshly grated. I'm not using the pre-shredded because it has a coating on it, doesn't melt as well. Definitely take the time to shred your own. And I've reduced the temperature on my crock pot to warm, and I'm just gonna stir this all together, waiting for those cheeses to melt. Okay, so here is everything all plated up after that cheese melted. And I am serving the soup with some additional Monterey Jack on top. I've got some tortilla strips, and then I've also got some green onions. This soup is very good, nice and savory. I did not add any additional salt to this soup, and it is so yummy. Next up, we're making Salisbury steak meatballs. Now, this is not a low sodium recipe, but there are some things that you can do to cut down on the sodium just a bit. So you're going to need 1 package of Lipton onion soup mix. You're going to need brown gravy, and I am using low sodium brown gravy. You're going to need a package of frozen meatballs. I'm using chicken meatballs. I got these from Aldi. You can use whatever type of meatballs you'd prefer. You also are going to need some ketchup, some Worcestershire sauce. You're going to need some beef broth, but again, I'm using bouillon, and they do have low sodium beef broth or bouillon, but I'm just using what I have on hand. And then you're also going to need a little cornstarch as well. Okay, so now it's time to make the sauce that's going to go over our meatballs. And I just dropped in the brown gravy. Next, the onion soup mix, Worcestershire sauce, ketchup. Next, we're adding in the beef broth, or in my case, again, I'm using bouillon. So it's 1 teaspoon of bouillon for every cup of water, and I'm adding 2 cups of water. So I just dropped in 2 teaspoons of the bouillon, and now I'm just adding in my water. Just adding in a little bit, and then using a whisk just to make sure it's incorporated, and then adding the rest of my water. And now I'm just pouring the sauce mixture over my frozen meatballs that I already have in the crock pot. I'm gonna cover and cook this on low for about 5 to 6 hours. Okay, so it's been about 6 hours, and this is what the meatballs look like. As you can see, that sauce is kind of thin. So now we're gonna thicken it up with a cornstarch slurry. So right here, I have 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and 1 tablespoon of water. I mixed it up. Now I'm just gonna add this to the meatballs. I'm gonna stir it around, and then I'm going to recover it and let this continue to cook for about 10 minutes or until it thickens up. Okay, so here are the meatballs. There's someone outside cutting the grass, so you may hear them in the background. But here are the meatballs in the crock pot right here, and you can see that that gravy thickened up quite nicely. Howard and I gave it a try, and it is a little salty. So if you decide to make this, I would definitely use low sodium beef broth in addition to the low sodium gravy, because it's a bit salty, especially if you eat it by itself. It's a little bit better with the pasta. You can also serve this over mashed potatoes as well. It's still really good and savory. It's good, but definitely if you're watching your salt, you're gonna wanna cut down on sodium any way that you can. And then I'm just serving the meatballs with a side of sauteed zucchini. Our final recipe is crock pot chicken and gravy. So for this recipe, you're gonna need about 2 pounds of chicken, and I am using bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, and I have 6 of them. You're also going to need the seasonings of your choice. I'm using garlic powder and onion powder. Not using any salt because the rest of the ingredients are pretty salty, but use whatever seasonings you prefer. I'm using a can of cream of mushroom soup. If your family's not a fan of mushrooms, cream of chicken, or any of the cream soups will work. And you're going to need 1 packet out of the box of Lipton Recipe Secrets, and you're going to need savory herb with garlic. And because my husband likes a lot of gravy, I'm adding in a little less than ½ cup of water, but you really do not need any water in this recipe at all. Okay, so I've got my chicken seasoned and ready to go. Now let's work on that gravy. Okay, so I've got my cream of mushroom soup in the bowl, and to that I'm adding that package of Lipton onion soup mix. Next, I'm adding in my water. And I'm just gonna stir it up until everything is nice and smooth. And now I'm just pouring that soup mixture right over those chicken thighs. And you'll notice they're overlapping a little bit, and that's totally fine. And now I'm just spreading that soup mixture over the chicken, and I am going to cover the crock pot and cook this on low for about 3 to 4 hours. Okay, so here is the chicken all plated up, and I let it go for about 4 hours, and it's nice and tender and falling apart. Serving it with a side of green beans and just some white rice with some more gravy over it. And let me show you the rest of the chicken in the crock pot right here. This is such a quick and easy meal. I hope you all enjoyed all of the recipes on our quick and easy crock pot meal series. If you did, please make sure to give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, we'd certainly love to have you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.